Hello everyone, my name's Laeticia Sevin and welcome to the International Opportunities Podcast. This series will give you an insight into our students' first-hand experiences abroad, whether that be a study exchange or work placement. From Fiji to Canada, our students have done amazing things abroad and we want to showcase that to all of you. If you're thinking about going abroad for your studies or for work, then this series will hopefully give you some inspiration, tips and advice. Today I am joined by Peter Reid, who studied biochemistry at Salford University. Hi Peter, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you for having me.
Good, thank you so much. So firstly, can you please introduce yourself and give us a bit of a background on your academic journey?
So I'm Peter, I studied at the University of Salford between 2021 and 2024. In that time I did a year abroad at the University of Toledo in northwest Ohio. Graduated, as I said, in 2024, and now I've started my PhD at the University of Leeds.
Brilliant. And how long was your exchange in Toledo?
It was 9 months.
9 months, wow. So you graduated from the University of Salford in 2024. What have you been up to since then?
As I say, I've started my PhD at the University of Leeds. That's with the Molecular and Nanoscale Physics Department. I'm working under Professor Lorna Dugan and David Brockwell, and that's working on, well, we'll get into a bit more later, but in brief, working on hydrogels.
Brilliant. So what inspired you to study biochemistry in the first place?
So I always enjoyed biology, I always enjoyed chemistry, and so naturally I wanted to be a vet. And then that really didn't work out. I found that I just couldn't handle the sight of animals on an operating table. But I really liked the lab work. And so from there I thought, well, what's the best degree that I can go in that direction that still keeps my options open? So I went into biochemistry.
Brilliant. And what motivated you to take a full study exchange year at the University of Toledo?
Well, before going to Toledo, I hadn't really travelled abroad much. And so I saw it as a great opportunity to expand my horizons, get myself involved in some more cultural aspects of the world. I know America isn't too dissimilar from the UK, but it's still dissimilar enough that I thought it was worthwhile doing.
And did you go solo or was there another group of students that went with you?
Yeah, there was a group of 8 of us that went over, so not entirely on my own, but at the same time, 8 people isn't a lot, especially when you only know half of them.
How did the course structure in Toledo compare to studying at the University of Salford?
It's very different. The US is a whole lot more intense. We would be having 4 or 5 classes at a time. We would have bi-weekly assessments and we'd have weekly homeworks.
Oh gosh.
So, and the structure of the grading system was very different as well. I was aiming to get a top grade, trying to get a first, the equivalent for which would be about a 3.6 GPA in the US, which meant that I was going to have to be achieving at least 80 to 85% average across every single of those bi-weekly assessments.
Wow. Did you have a lot of support over there?
We had quite a bit of support, but it was very much access as you need it. So I know a lot of people that went over didn't really access that, and then they just kind of had to roll with the punches. But there was support if you knew where to look.
Good. And what were the biggest academic and cultural differences that you noticed between the UK and the US?
So, of course, a big thing I'll say is that the workload. Everyone there is so academically minded. Everyone is pushing so hard to achieve the best that they can. I know people who would get very upset if they got lower than 90% in an exam.
Wow.
And then on the cultural side, Americans are so lovely. They're so accepting. The number of people that I would meet once off on a night out and they'd invite you back to their home to sit and have a coffee afterwards. It was incredible, and you felt so safe there.
That's so good to hear, and they love a British accent as well.
Oh, 100%.
So what was your proudest academic or personal achievement during your study exchange?
So as I say, I was aiming for top grades, and when I first went over, that meant a 4.0 GPA, which is the highest you can get. I was told it was basically unachievable. People do not get it.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 or 4 people had done it since the exchange started in the 80s, and by the skin of my teeth, I managed it, which meant that I averaged in every class at least 93%.
That's incredible.
My best class was Biochemistry 2, where thanks to extra credit giving me extra marks, I was able to get 107%.
Wow, that is insane. That's so good.
It took a lot of effort. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it was easy.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of hard work. And were there any challenges that you faced, either academically or personally, during your time abroad, and how did you overcome them?
I think the biggest challenge was how isolating it was being at the university. To get into the city of Toledo was pretty much impossible on foot, and the public transport was really unreliable, so you had to rely on other people to drive you in, which is great until you're then trying to get those same people to drive you back again. And so being on campus was quite isolating. I was friends with a few people, but I couldn't really get out and do things as much as I wanted to.
Right.
And really, I think the way that I overcame that was I just spent more time doing things with friends, doing activities that don't require going out, board games and things like that.
How did you make friends? Did you find it easy? Or...
I think the best way that me and a few of the others went about making friends was you just go to a public place and you open your mouth.
Yeah.
And people flock over. Oh, you're British?
Yeah.
Oh, what part of London are you from? It was brilliant. And so even if that was only a mate for a day, it was still a mate for a day.
Exactly.
But a lot of those people would turn out to share a class somewhere, and so you'd hang out with them more, and before you know it, you're hanging out every weekend.
That's brilliant. And did you have a lot of other international students on the course?
Yeah, there were quite a few international students, a lot coming over from China, a lot of coming over from Spain, funnily enough. So there were quite a few other people who you could kind of relate to and talk to about the experience of being a foreigner.
Yeah. And did you live on campus or?
Yeah, just outside of campus. Not university housing, because that would have meant sharing a room with a complete stranger. So just barely off campus. I think it was about a 5-10 minute walk in.
Okay, and was it affordable?
I would say so. It was no more expensive than accommodation was the university accommodation at Salford.
Right. And has studying abroad improved your confidence? And if so, how?
I would definitely say so. Before going abroad, I wasn't particularly good at making friends. I wasn't very good at public speaking, talking to people. But I found that going from first year uni, you've got to make friends when you first get there. Then in second year, for most people, you get to keep those friends. Well, I didn't, because I had to go to the US and do all of that over again.
Yeah.
And then coming back in third year, I had to pick up the pieces with those friends from first year. And so that did force me to be a lot more confident and outgoing to maintain those connections.
I couldn't agree more, because I went to Canada for my exchange, and when I got back, it was so much easier to talk to people, and you felt like you're more inclined to say yes and go to things that you wouldn't normally go to. It just
100%.
gives you that boost, doesn't it? Now, what areas of biochemistry interest you the most?
I've always been more into the molecular and structural biology side of things. I think it's a lot more interesting to talk about the nitty-gritty than it is the large picture.
Great. And did your time in Toledo influence your research interests or career goals in any way?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the classes that we did over there, most people in the US, they'll do their major and their minor, which means that you end up having your intense classes and your less intense classes. Well, we only had intense classes, and one of those was molecular biology, which we did. It was a 4,000 class, so for final year American students, and that was a really difficult class, but I wanted to do good at it.
Yeah.
And so my interest in that is what has kind of pushed forward now my interest in molecular biology further.
Great. So it's had a big impact on what you want to do in the future now.
Definitely.
Were there any particular projects or professors at Toledo that had a lasting impact on you?
I would say in terms of professors, that would be Dr. Lirim Shemshadini. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I never could get it right. He did molecular biology, and he was just so charismatic with the class. He was always pushing us to answer questions, and he would sit there and wait for us to come up with an answer if need be. And if no one could, well, then he would eventually move on. But that really did inspire me to push the direction I'm going. In terms of projects, we did a project for genomics and proteomics, which was based around doing a genetic engineering project. You couldn't pick to genetically engineer humans or things which directly help humans. You had to do something else. And my group, we worked on this gene that exists in an apple to make them drought resistant.
Okay.
Because the idea was you had to sell it kind of Shark Tank or I guess Dragon's Den style. And initially we were doing it for apples that would taste sweeter. Then we remembered sweet apples exist and you can't sell that. And it just so turned out that the gene that we were editing was also involved in water retention.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to kind of shift the focus towards drought-resistant apples instead.
That's really interesting. Now, you've recently secured a PhD. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so it's at the University of Leeds. It's an interdisciplinary PhD, so I work with the Faculty of Biological Sciences and the Molecular and Nanoscale Physics Department. And what I do is, like I say, it's hydrogels, it's jelly science. I am working on determining the force propagation at the mesoscale within these gels. So it's really easy to tell at the protein level how these forces propagate because you just take the proteins and you stretch them. It's really easy to do at the level of the whole gel because you take the gel and you move it. But it's that in between, that actual network propagation of forces that we're interested in. And so that's what I'm working towards understanding.
Brilliant. Now, how did you go about securing your PhD, and do you have any tips for students that are hoping to follow a similar path?
So I have to really give the credit to my old supervisor, Darren Brooks, for telling me to just go and find a PhD, sort by pre-funded, and just apply to as many as you can. At my peak, I was applying to 2 or 3 PhDs per day, and I did that for about 2 weeks. So I think I sent off over 60 applications in total, and I had about 2 or 3 offers back. So really, if you're going for a PhD, you need to cast as wide a net as possible. You need to accept that you are going to apply for projects that you're perhaps less interested in. And even if that is just to have the interview, to do that interview technique, it all still is worth it in the end.
Yeah, and it's practice as well if you do multiple interviews and multiple applications.
Yeah, I mean, I had 4 interviews before I had the one which finally secured me the position.
Yeah. Persistence is key. Now, what excites you most about this next phase of your academic career?
Well, this is where I was always aiming to be. I was always hoping to be at the PhD and to be able to call myself a doctor, which I'll be able to do in the next 4 years.
Yay!
So I think what excites me next is that I don't know where I'm going after this. You know, I've got 3.5, 4 years to figure that out, and then it will just be on my own.
Well, it sounds like you're on the right path. You're doing everything you need to do, and you've done absolutely amazing to secure your PhD as well.
Thank you.
Do you feel that your study exchange has boosted your employability?
Oh, 100%. You know, when I came back to the UK and I was starting looking at, like I say, PhD opportunities, I was also looking at industry jobs, I found that a lot of the people that I spoke to, either themselves or they knew someone who had lived in America. And so there was that immediate crossover that you could talk about, oh, where did you go? What were you doing? And I think that just the confidence that I've gained having to speak to people who are from a different culture about, you know, the sciences, it's something that is very important to be able to do. You know, there's not so much a language barrier, but there is certainly a barrier in communication, how you understand these concepts. And being able to communicate in that way has really helped me to kind of push forward and get myself to where I am now, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great unique selling point on the CV as well, and a great talking point in interviews. Now, what advice would you give to students that are considering a study exchange, especially those in STEM fields?
I'm going to say a kind of mean answer to that, which is be realistic. You know, you need to consider, are you financially, mentally, physically in a position to do this exchange? Because moving to America, it was expensive. You know, part of that was because I was spending money because I'm in a new place.
Yeah.
But it's challenging, it's very challenging, and you need to make sure that you are in the mindset to do that.
Yeah.
But I would also say these opportunities aren't very common. If you can get one, do. If you can go abroad, do, because there's pretty much no downside to it.
That is the best advice you could have given. Definitely be realistic. Now, finally, if you had to sum up your experience in Toledo in just one sentence, what would it be?
I knew this question was coming and I was ready from the start. The most important year of my life so far.
That is great to hear. Oh, thank you so much, Peter, and thank you for coming to talk to me today.
Yes, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much. If you listeners want to find out more about study exchanges or work placements, then please visit the Student Hub International Opportunities page. There you can find out about our drop-in sessions, application processes and partnerships. I'll see you in next week's episode, where we'll be hearing from more of our amazing students about their overseas placements. Please like, share and subscribe to this podcast so you can hear more, and we can spread the word about our international opportunities. We'll see you next time.